Good evening, everyone. Welcome. My name is Asad Lalji. For those joining us for the first time, a special welcome to you. Please refer to the chat box for more information on Avid Learning and our platform. Avid Online was launched on the 1st of April 2020 in a direct response to the pandemic. So now we're 16 months young and over 265 programs later, we can say that although 2020 and most of 2021 has challenged us in unprecedented ways, we've managed to stay positive, relevant, engaged, and engaging. We continue to champion and bring to our audiences the best of the arts and culture and stay true to our mantra, as always, that learning never stops. I strongly believe in the power of the arts to impact change. And as environmental concerns continue to grow worldwide, we at Avid find it imperative to shed some light on such issues and leverage our platform to educate and spread awareness by communicating through the arts. With that curatorial vision, we launched Sustainability Now last April, a thematized and targeted series of discussions that aims to convert audiences into change makers and active catalysts and custodians for a greener future. In this series, we've presented over 50 change makers and speakers, over 40 programs that have investigated topics such as architecture, urbanism, tourism, technology, museums, fashion, food. We also had an environmental film festival that featured films that were driven by sustainable and environmental consciousness. Please do check out our YouTube channel for our archives on the programs you may have missed. We plan to continue these conversations around wildlife conservation and a very special children's book coming out in a few months. And this brings me to our evening session, The Age of Conscious Consumerism, a fascinating lecture demonstration on the innovations and changes being made in the consumer markets with the rise of the mindful and responsible consumer. Coveted industry perspectives from pioneers and change makers leading this revolution will be discussed and diverged. Allow me to introduce this evening's speakers. Director, 0% Shop India, Aman Gupta, will present on how his unique initiative is following the lead of the conscious consumer and sourcing and guiding brands that are shifting the conversation to be more eco-friendly. CEO Kama Ayurveda, Vivek Sahni, will present on how his brand is changing the game for the branding and marketing of luxury skincare and cosmetics in the country while making sustainable and organic products. They will be in conversation with urban designer and curator, Waste Less Projects, Sarita, Sudhakaran. These animated speakers will discuss how conscious consumerism, best practices, innovations from India and abroad, waste management, recycling, upcycling, and so much more. But for more about these very impressive speakers, please refer to their bios that have been posted in the chat section. They should have been emailed to you earlier. Please note the session will last 75 minutes, followed by a 15-minute Q&A, and Sarita will be taking questions submitted. So please keep them ready, keep posting them in the Q&A box throughout. On that note, thank you once again for tuning in. Over to you, Sarita, for your opening remarks, and look forward to a fascinating session. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Asad, and thank you to everyone who's joined us this evening. Let me also take a moment to thank the team at Avid Learning for putting together and providing us with this opportunity to discuss what I think is a very relevant topic of consumerism, especially for the times that we live in today. Now, as opening remarks, I wanted to refer to the latest not so positive report on the climate crisis that was put out by IPCC earlier this week, that very confidently states human activity as the main cause of climate change and of, I quote, making extreme climate events, including heat waves, heavy rainfall, and droughts more frequent and severe, end quote. Now, economical and social progress over the last century has been accompanied by environmental degradation that is endangering the very systems on which our future development and survival hinges. To this day, production, consumption patterns in our world follows a very extractive process or an approach where we're not just dependent on the environment for basic needs anymore, but we do so in a way that continues to have destructive impacts on most systems on the planet. Over the last decade or so, we've witnessed how nations and leaders, they're in frequent dialogues planning the transition towards a more low impact future, be it in clean energy, be it in transportation, construction, or even food production. If I were to state some facts, as per the UN, in just the past 2 years, from 2017 to 2019, almost 79 countries have reported change or introducing of some sort of policy to promote sustainable consumption and production practices in their nations. All these seem like very positive trends in the right direction, but they're very far removed from the everyday consumer, because most individuals don't really follow what's happening at a global scale. But what individuals can do is look at individual consumption, their choices. It's the one area where everyone can contribute, everyone can act upon simple changes that can have a big impact on society as a whole. And to just put that in numbers, for example, the global material footprint, which is an indicator of the pressure put on the environment to support economic growth and to satisfy the material needs of people, this figure grew by 17.4% to 85.9 billion metric tons in 2017 as compared to 2010. Like, in the span of 7 years, it's grown by 17.4%. If we take the example of one of our most common commodities, which is food, we currently lose about 14% of the food produced after harvesting, during transportation, storage, processing alone, amounting to a cost factor of over $400 billion a year. By just reducing food loss and food wastage, we can contribute to environmental sustainability by lowering production costs and increasing the efficiency of food systems. And this is just a simple thing that consumers can engage in. As consumers, just making these informed choices is the need of the hour. And if one has the opportunity to buy from ethical and, more importantly, from local sources, one can make a difference as well as exercise pressure on businesses to adopt responsible practices. This past year of the pandemic, I think, has awakened everyday consumers towards the importance of making changes to how and what they consume. COVID-19, in fact, offers an opportunity to everyone to develop what I would call recovery plans that will reverse the way we function as human beings. Be this at a personal level, be it as a policymaker, or even as businesses. In fact, it's in their interest to find new solutions that enable a more regenerative world. A better understanding of environmental and social impacts of products and services is very much needed. Businesses need to communicate transparency of product life cycles and how these are affected by use, not just within one person's lifestyle, but also intergenerationally. Businesses need to start identifying hotspots within their value chain where interventions have the greatest potential to improve impact on the system as the whole can be undertaken. Also, further innovation and design solutions which should never stop, be it in raw material usage, packaging, distribution. All of this can really enable and inspire individuals to lead more conscious lives. And I speak personally, not as an expert in this space, but more as a consumer myself. So today, to converse about this new paradigm, we have with us two very distinguished practitioners whose business philosophy is aligned towards the creation of conscious brands. Their brands marry the needs of a 21st century consumer like myself, while also focusing on the social and environmental impacts of running a business. We'll begin today's session by hearing a brief introduction from each of our panelists about their work, themselves, and then follow that with a conversation. So, Aman, shall we start with you, and then Vivek can follow with his presentation?
Sure. Thank you very much, Sarita, for that introduction. Hello, everyone. My name is Aman Gupta. I'm the founder of 0%, what we call a mindful lifestyle business. And I'm here today to talk to you about the idea of conscious consumerism and my own personal and professional journey on this idea and how I got to it. I'm going to share my screen with you so you can see my presentation. So what we call zero is more. Our business is 0%, and our focus is on the idea of this concept of zero is more. What we do at 0% is we want to make it easier for consumers to drink less alcohol and animal products, eat less meat and more organic, consume less sugar, and consume healthier in order to be happier. So it's a fairly simple mission, but it has a lot of different elements that have come about for us to get to this level. Like many other businesses, my business of 0% was the outcome of my own personal journey and interest in living more mindfully and having an awakening as to how far away from this I was around 2 years ago. I started making changes in my own lifestyle. I thought the others could benefit from this same experience, and that's how the idea of 0% came along for me. I thought I'd make 0% a reflection of my own experiences. I also learned that everything was really very connected, starting from what I put into my body, to how I felt, to how I look, to how I behave. To me, a mindful product or conscious consumerism is something that is good for our body, good for our community, and good for the planet, as we realize that all of this was interconnected. Now, here's some pretty crazy facts. Did you know that animal agriculture is responsible for 30% of the world's water consumption and occupies 45% of the Earth's land and is responsible for 91% of Brazilian Amazon destruction? Did you know that humans drink 19.7 billion liters of water every day and eat 9.5 billion kilos of food? The cow population, on the other hand, drinks 170 billion liters of water and eats 61 billion kilos of food on a daily basis. Did you know that we have 1 billion people starving every day, but worldwide around 50% of the grains and legumes that we grow are fed to animals? Is there something completely wrong with this scenario? So for me, this whole journey started about 4 or 5 years ago. All of these kind of facts got me thinking. I got really interested in all of these different facts, and I started looking into these issues deeper and deeper. Around a year and a half ago, I decided to do a month-long detox from alcohol, which somehow was the big trigger for me. It triggered a number of different changes in my life. The month-long detox felt amazing, and I carried it on, eventually giving up alcohol completely. I found myself connecting further with yoga and feeling fitter and doing more and more yoga. This got me interested in meditation, and I then took a course in meditation to learn more about the subject and what really meditation was. You know, everyone talked about meditation, and I really was always a skeptic, and I was wondering, you know, I really need to learn about this and do it myself. At the same time, I realized that I didn't feel good when I was eating milk products, when I was eating meat, when I ate white bread, white pasta. All of these things became somehow various subjects that I started getting involved in and exploring more by myself. I started experimenting with removing some of these products from my diet. I got more attracted to becoming vegetarian. From becoming vegetarian, I went on to becoming vegan. I even got to a point where I started eating more and more raw food. And each of these steps that I took over this process of 18 to 20 months just made me feel so much better physically, mentally, emotionally. And this then started to bring all these questions for me as to why was I eating all this stuff for so long, and you know that had so many negative effects on my body, on the way I was thinking. And why was it like the common practice? How come we had never been, you know, taught about these things? And why is it that, you know, alcohol is promoted as being so cool, or, you know, meat is promoted as being such a great product? And these became really big questions for me. My conclusion from all of these questions and all of this thoughts that I had in my head was that a lot of this had to do with the training and education that we had over many, many years. Also, what we see in society is the common norm. And to make a change from this way was to question, all the general beliefs that we had and also the beliefs of my peers. And that was quite difficult because, a lot of people looked at me and were thinking, what am I doing? What are you doing? What direction are you taking? I started having discussions with friends and family about, why I was not drinking alcohol, why I wasn't eating meat. And they all looked at me thinking, what's wrong with you? Why are you doing these things? It's another great example, like things that we thought were good for us. Wheat is a great example of this. Wheat used to be really healthy, whereas most wheat now is industrialized and genetically modified. A lot of more people are getting gluten intolerance, getting different food intolerances, and this is because of the industrial food chain. But most people are not willing to even think about this or question that, could this even be the case, because they're so used to the fact that wheat is just a part of the diet. Similarly, alcohol, on a social level, the peer pressure that I felt when I stopped drinking alcohol was incredible. I found that, it was a huge social problem. I went out and most of my friends were like, what's wrong with you? Why are you not drinking a beer anymore? And it became a huge topic of discussion. And so I think that's another reason why a lot of people, or a lot of us, don't go towards making any of these changes, because of the fear of, changing from the constant norm or what we've been used to for so long. This led me to the idea of, mindful consumption, and this idea of really thinking about what I consume. It got me looking for alternatives, because I realized that, the challenges that I was facing in making these changes is what's probably also the challenges that most other people will face. And so my goal was, how can I make it easier for people to make these changes? And so I started looking for alternatives. What could I drink on a social level? I realized that there was a whole world of alternatives out there emerging, alternatives for alcohol, alternatives for milk, alternatives for meat, sugar, gluten. So all the different areas or categories that I was taking out of my diet, I started looking for what I could use as alternatives, so I could still kind of consume and live in a way that I had been living before, but with better alternatives. I realized that a lot of these alternatives were out there, but they were out there in very fragmented ways. Small, mid-sized producers, they were doing a lot of really innovative stuff, but there was no platform or no place that you could go to and say, oh, look, I'm trying to change my lifestyle. I'm trying to go towards, consuming more consciously. I want to, remove these things from my diet, but where do I shop? What do I do? And so this was where I saw the opportunity with 0%. I saw the idea that, there was a platform to have all these different categories together, where people could come, could get more educated, could be experienced and exposed to all these different, innovative products and brands out there that were doing really, really innovative stuff. So once I walked down this path, I realized that I wasn't the only one. Each of these categories was really growing individually. Innovation was driving a lot of change. It's now, really possible to have a complex wine, remove the alcohol and keep the flavor. It's possible to have an alternative for meat and dairy that's sustainable, yet tasty and fulfilling. So I feel that, we're really coming into this age of conscious consumerism, and there's a really big opportunity for us to kind of go towards this path in a much more easier way. This is great news for us, for our bodies, for our communities, for our planet. And this is the reason I set up 0%. So I want to tell you now just a little bit about 0% and what we do actually at 0%. So we set up 0% with the idea that we believe that mindful consumers are looking for honest and transparent brands that are focused on well-being, produced with high-quality ingredients, are earth-friendly alternatives and enjoyable to consume. We also believe that the future of consumption is got to be a plant-based lifestyle, and so the only way we can get people more inspired and working towards going to a plant-based lifestyle is make it easier for them to adopt that. We provide mindful consumers with the freedom of choice by offering them a curated selection of plant-based alternatives in multiple channels across retail, HoReCa, convenience, and e-commerce. So the idea is that we work with various different brands, and then we focus on all these different channels where we can try and get our products out. We own, we produce, we represent, we market, distribute, and sell leading brands in 8 different categories. And these categories that we specialize in are 0% alcohol, so alternatives to classic alcohol drinks like rum, gin, beer, cider, wine, all done and produced in the classic way, but without the alcohol. Similarly, 0% dairy, so milk products without milk, so nut-based, plant-based milk products, anything from milk to yogurt to cheese. 0% sugar, alternatives to sugar, honey, xylitol, stevia, all these different plant-based alternatives to sugar. 0% pesticides, which is essentially organic products. 0% gluten, so anything from gluten-free pasta to gluten-free bread to ready-made gluten-free products. And then 0% meat, so the whole category of beef, chicken, fish, all going into this plant-based alternative element, which is super, super interesting to see the kind of innovation that's happening in the industry in all of these different categories. Another category is 0% microplastic. So, plastic has been a huge issue. We are all much more aware of this. And so we see this with everything in terms of packaging, in terms of things like straws and takeaway boxes and things that we use in our daily lives, and how we can find better alternatives for these products. And last but not least, natural waters. So we created 0% with the intent to be the leading platform for health and wellness conscious consumers seeking high quality food and beverage brands catering to a plant-based mindful consumption. Our whole idea is zero is more. So we think that, taking some of these traditional items out of our food chain will help us not only become healthier, but by becoming healthier and becoming more conscious, we start with what we put in our body, we start with what we put on our body, and eventually that helps us, start looking at how we lead our lives in a much more mindful and conscious way. So yeah, that's a little bit about us, and I'll pass you back to Sarita, and looking forward to the discussion after this.
Thank you so much, Aman. That was quite enlightening, actually. To even know that there's a brand that's existing out there who is considering bringing all of these, ideologies into one platform. I think, Vivek, if you could also introduce, the work that you do, and then we'll dive into the conversational part of today's session.
Okay, great. So let me introduce myself. I'm Vivek Sahni, and I'm a co-founder and the CEO of Karma Ayurveda. And I think, let me just start at the beginning, so I actually went to art school and I studied graphic design, and my business partner, Dave, studied painting. So, we were sort of hardly people who would, be expected to be running a beauty business. But, these things happen. And it happened randomly. So, there's a brand called Khadi soaps, Khadi thing. So late 90s, early 2000s, we actually worked to create this brand, this Khadi brand for the government of soaps and shampoos and, creams, etc. And, so Khadi is actually it's a Khadi Village Industries, and it's actually a series of cooperatives. And we were asked to actually just package to create, gift boxes of these Khadi products. And from that idea of working with gift boxes, we actually wanted to know what was, I mean, I wanted to know what is in the products, who was making them, how they were made. And so we actually started working with the cooperative to actually understand how these products are made, and what's going into them. And then I discovered that even though it's supposedly a natural product, it's got a lot of other stuff going on. And we actually ended up working with them and working with the government labs and actually creating a clean brand, which we did for over 2 years, which was very successful. And that finished, project finished. We went back to designing. We used to design books and packaging and stuff like that. And I think a couple of years later, two other friends of ours, we were chatting, and they wanted to talk about this, this idea of taking something which is Indian, which was traditional and which had proven efficacy, and to take it out to the world. We were very conscious of that whatever we made had to be all natural. I think that was a requirement. I mean, it was 20 years ago, but it was a very specific thing, and I was really quite conscious about that. And one of my partners, co-founders, is from South India, and we discovered Ayurveda, which I think 20 years ago was pretty much a novelty, especially to somebody from North India. It was a bunch of smelly oils which somebody or the other, some aunt or somebody or grandmother were telling to use. And I have to say, thank God for Baba Ramdev, who's really helped us, popularize this version of Ayurveda and, the popularity of it. And we all know what Ayurveda is now, because for the longest time, everybody used to ask me, is this herbal? Is this natural? What does it mean? What is this? What is this stuff? And so I think you can start sharing the slides, Aisha. So I'm going to talk about karma and how it came about and what we do as a company, and also the challenges we face. I mean, you can see our tagline, it's authentic, which was critical for us. It was time tested, it's Ayurveda, and it's effective. And authentic by the way we use classical formulations, following them, in obviously made in a modern format, but we basically, if it says use a fresh herb, we use the fresh herb. We don't use a nutraceutical. They're tested because, they are time tested, but also we are now doing clinical trials and have done clinical trials on pretty much a large portion of the portfolio, and it is extraordinarily effective. And that's what we base our company on, of being, all natural, clean, authentic, time tested, effective. Can we go to the next slide, please? So we started in 2002. We went to South India, and I was looking at these products, and they're pretty much all medicines. We went to AVP, which is a large hospital with a pharmacy, and we saw all these Ayurvedic treatments, which are meant for basically to heal you, across every single ailment, like you go to an allopathic hospital. But what we found was that these plant-based products actually work, and people were, recovering, were getting better. And we worked with these doctors over 2 years to take some of those treatments and make them into over-the-counter remedies. And we looked at, skin and hair, because those seem to be the majority of concerns that most people have. I think it's because of the pollution, the water pollution, the air pollution, as Aman mentioned, the food we're eating, you come to breakouts, your hair is falling out, you've got pigmentation, all kinds of skin related issues. And we, can you go to the next slide, please? And we basically, so we looked at all these products and we were like, what do we call it? That was the biggest one. And there were a multiplicity of names. But then this idea of karma came together, which is desire, and Ayurveda, which is science. And I thought it was quite a beautiful name. We all thought it was a very beautiful name. And, that's how Karma Ayurveda was born. We took a decision that we would work with Ayurveda. We would work with, can you keep go to the next slide also? So, we said that we looked at these products and they were strange smelling oils. And, we were told that, should we add a fragrance to it, add a perfume to it? And I said, no, let's keep it clean. Because it's effective, it's strange smelling, but once you use it, it works. And actually the smell also works on your body. And so we launched with 9 products, all of them natural, all clean. There's only oil or powder. There was no shampoo because I couldn't find, I didn't want to use anything with a surfactant. So we made an Upton, a body scrub, and we made, there was a dry shampoo, a powder shampoo. There's an oil for the face, 3 oils for the body, and oil for the hair, all of which are, still our best sellers. And, obviously as the company grew, we had to, because we obviously found that people want to use a cream. They want to use a shampoo. It's too complicated to put an oil on your face all the time. Too complicated to, use a powder to wash your body and a powder to wash your hair. And this is a dilemma which we face, how do we do this, because there's this idea of being completely clean, but then you need to add a surfactant and you need to add a preservative. So we basically went to find the cleanest way, the cleanest surfactants, the cleanest preservatives that we could find to be able to make the creams and the lotions and the shampoos, conditioners that were added to the product range. In all of them, the actives, we stayed true to Ayurveda. So everything, the actives in it are from the original Ayurvedic oils. Even the creams, the actives are the Ayurvedic oils. Everything has got, even like we just launched a Bringadi shampoo, it's got the same actives as the Bringadi hair oil. So we wanted to balance the old with the new. And we, set ourselves these brand values and these DNA, which would be something which we would be able to sustain the brand going forward. Because, obviously as companies grow, as businesses grow longer, grow bigger, there's always a pressure on profit. How does one, balance the profitability with this idea of sustainability, of being clean, of being pure, of being authentic. And so we created this little video. It's actually, this is one slide, but there's almost like a brand book on what we will do and which we will not do. And the most important was that we would be authentic. And authentic, one is obviously with the products, but also authentic with the way we would deal with people, with our staff, with our customers, in the way we function, with our vendors. We would be balanced, because Ayurveda is all about balance, balancing all your doshas to be in harmony. So balance in the decisions we take, balance in what we do. Effective, which is obvious, effective in what we do as people and as products. And very importantly, kind. And kindness is a kind of it's an odd word, but it encompasses many things. And the most important one is to be kind to yourself. And be kind to yourself, as Aman said, in what you eat, what you put into your body, what you physically put outside your body, what you apply on your face, your skin, your hair. Then being kind to the people you work with, your customers, your staff, your vendors across that universe, and then being kind to the planet in what we leave behind, in the kind of products we use and the footprint that we leave. And we kind of use these DNAs and values to so when we take a decision, are we able to take 3 or 4 of these boxes before we take it? And this kind of becomes like a, kind of a thing. We've, obviously the products are, we have EcoCert, we have LACON, we have USFDA, we have all kinds of certifications to balance the authenticity. We are PETA certified so that we are clean. We've got all the certifications to say that we are clean, so it's not just talk, but there's an actual validation of what we do. Can we go to the next one, please? And coming to kind, because this is something which is, which is really, kind, sustainable. So obviously, one is from the ingredients that we do. But what was another thing which was really interesting to me, and I think started right at the beginning, when we were making these products, and they were the company asked me, Vivek, if you follow the classical formulation, this has to be a fresh herb, it's coming from X place. Otherwise, we can use a dry version, it'll be much faster and easier. And I said, no, we'll stick with that, and that's it's harvested in X time of year. We're following the natural cycle of the soil and the planting cycles for a lot of the ingredients. So we wanted to keep that. We also, this idea of helping people wherever we could. So, when we made the shop, like the baskets we have in the shop, I was at Delhi Heart and I found one not NGO from Manipur, which was selling about the baskets. And, now we've got 50 shops, and all the shops still have those baskets coming from that NGO. Over many Diwalis, Holis, whatever, when we have for especially Diwali and gifting Rakhi, when we have our gift boxes, we choose the accessories, like for example, there's a diya or a candle or whatever. We try and get it made from a not-for-profit. And so we are able to help a community which is outside our own. So even though the diya maker is nothing to do with thing, but he's making 10,000 diyas, it's giving him and an entire community something to, it's sustaining them. So whether it's the baskets, the diyas, every idol in our shop, we have a Dhanvantaram idol in our shop, which I'd always wanted. And, when we couldn't find one we liked, and we basically had it made in, I found a master craftsman in Swami Malai in South India. And since then, he's been making all of them. So he's made us 50, and his entire community is now grown, and they've restarted what was a family business which had gone down is restarted and picked up again. For Holi, the colors that we use, we work with a not-for-profit again, where they make the colors, which we give away again for free, which we buy from them, and the colors are made from temple flowers, which are discarded. So, we try and work across this kind universe. We've just set up our own factory in South India again, outside Coimbatore, which is, hopefully going to be, with all the LEEDs ratings. We've got, it's not only forget water harvesting, but we've also, put in the sewage systems, which are with the wastewater recycling. We've created like a eco environment around it. It's solar powered. It's energy efficient. So, there's this. So basically, as a company, trying to go outside ourselves and basically, create a universe which is, helpful to other people too. Should we go to the next slide, please? So, I think I've already spoken about this: the kind to the planet, kind to the people, kind to skin. All of this is there. I think we go to the next one. And then coming to, who buys Kama? And when we first started making them, and I was like, they asked us, who's your client and who's going to buy it? And, I just said, because, they were slightly strange smelling. And I said, no, basically anybody who's, slightly educated and conscious of what they are putting onto the bodies, they would be our client, and they would be the person who's interested. And in this, and this was 20 years ago, and I have to say, it's actually an incredibly large number of people I find who have this idea of being conscious of what they put onto their body, conscious of what they put onto their skin, of how they consume, what they want to consume, and what they do with it, and also wanting to use efficacious products at work. So products at work which are not harmful to their bodies in any way. And there's I think there's a surprisingly a large number of these consumers. So I think we go to the next slide. We've got lots of awards, which, touch wood, there's a God up there which keeps us going with this. But to sum it up, I think the question that is always bothering me is that, we actually first started with glass bottles, and we put all the powders into little stainless steel tins. So the steel again is recyclable, and so is the glass. We still use the stainless steel tins for the packaging. They're still there. The powders still come in that. But the glass bottles we found, because of the oils, they were going into the bathroom, they were breaking. And that is it's actually a hazard, because if the bottle slips in the shower, you can cut your feet or cut your hands or whatever else. So we moved to plastic, to PET, and this year we've gone now to 65% recyclable grade PET, which has just come up now. We just moved to that. But this is always a question, and as Saritha said, how do you balance your carbon footprint with what you're producing? So while I might be producing the physical liquid is clean, absolutely clean, I also need to find a way of being able to dispose of this stuff, the everyday packaging, And there are some initiatives which we now initiated. So we actually tried tying up with a bunch of recyclers who will pick up the bottles from the stores and take them back, the plastic bottles and PET bottles, and recycle them. So this is where we are as a company, being authentic, kind, and effective. And hope I think we're trying to figure out going forward to continually adopt and find the best ways of or best initiatives of reducing our footprint in the best way we can.
Thank you so much, Vivek. It was very interesting to hear the two of you speak about your personal journeys, and I kind of realized I didn't really plan on sharing, how I got to where I am today, but I'll very briefly try and put that, in a couple of sentences. So, to start off with, I grew up in Dubai, which, if you know the Dubai of, the 70s and the 80s, it was the exact opposite of sustainable. It's also the exact opposite of what Dubai is today. I grew up eating packaged foods. I drank my first glass of fresh milk when I was 18 and I had come to India. So that's kind of like what my life was when I was growing up. But thankfully, I landed up in India, in Bombay, to do architecture, which introduced me to this concept of sustainability, merely through materials and all of the things that we speak about in architecture. But it kind of stayed back with me as a philosophy over my working years and my initial study phase and all of that. And it was only when I moved to the United States to pursue my master's that I got introduced to this whole concept of zero waste, which was nascent, but it was also very in your face over there. There was a lot of stores which were trying to go plastic free or packaging free. Farmers markets were abundant and all of that. And it seemed like a very, very exciting place to be at that point in time. And I, like a very young person, I got on to that bandwagon. And then when I moved back to India is when that bubble sort of burst, and I realized, the zero and zero waste is not very attainable. It's all dependent on where you are in the world, where you are in life, how you live your life, and so many other factors. But since 2010, it's been this constant struggle initially to kind of move to sustainable alternatives or eco-friendly alternatives. And over the period of time, what I also learned was there's a lot of information out there. There's a lot of misinformation out there. Very easy for average consumers to, kind of get confused. And although my professional work was not in that space, in 2019, once I got a hang of waste management as a process, I realized that a lot of people will start making a lot more conscious choices and decisions when they understand the process that goes behind, post-consumer waste, because that's how I changed the way I lived. And from being someone who was attempting zero waste, today my lifestyle is all about low impact, which means everything I consume comes from a radius of around 100 kilometers at the max. So it's usually within 30 kilometers, but there's one or two things which I have to go a little beyond. And that has considerably, I go to the extent of calculating my footprint in terms of consumption. And I realized that this knowledge and this information, there might be an audience for that, rather than, selling brands and trying to do something I'm not good at. I am much better at sharing knowledge, and that's how the Wasteless Project came about, as an endeavor to educate people about, facts. It's as simply put. It's how do you stop generating waste? It's simply by learning a lot more about waste, learning a lot more in detail about the process of waste, what goes into products. And so from being a project which helped individuals to kind of, reduce their consumption patterns, it's now slowly morphing where I'm doing sustainability audits for brands, really narrowing down their carbon footprint, or what we call is more of their consumption miles, helping them achieve, a sort of balance, some of the issues that you guys brought up. So we're trying to do that through the Wasteless Project now, while also keeping the knowledge aspect of it very intact, because what I've learned is people really love, people are like me, slowly learning to love the idea of waste, which was not how waste was perceived in our country. So why I thought I should share that is because my concept of a conscious consumer is a little different from, probably where Aman comes from. I think I've tread that path of trying to be plant-based and trying to be, zero gluten and all of that. And I've realized a lot more local, a lot more seasonal is better also for the present, not just for the future, because I have to contribute to an economy where, livelihoods can be met and all of that. And eating something which is right in my backyard makes a lot more sense than transporting something that's coming all the way from the US. So let's start off by probably, I know you've already covered it in some detail, but it would be nice to hear from both of you actually, from your work, from your personal experience, on how consumption patterns, as brands, how do you think consumption patterns have evolved over the years leading up to this, the new age conscious consumer today? And maybe also touch up about consumer behaviors, maybe, India versus abroad. Have you seen a difference in the way consumers are in different parts of the world? So, Vivek, would you like to go first on that, or?
So which part of the question you want me to ask?
Both. So how have you seen consumption patterns change over the years? And also, I don't know where your consumer base is, but do you see a difference in the way consumers have, responded to your brand or evolved in terms of consciousness over the couple of years in India and abroad?
So over time, have I seen consumption change? Yes, because when I grew up, there was not that much available to buy. We basically bought everything that grew locally. What you spoke about, what grew in your backyard, the seasonal. There were no supermarkets. You went to the sabzi wala and you bought your saman from there, or the local market and you bought your stuff from there. And there was a kind of limited, and I'm talking about as early as 20, 25 years ago. It was fairly limited, the physical amount of stuff that you could buy. So obviously, you consume basically what is available. So it's restricted your choices.
Yeah.
Over this period of time, one is that there's a whole bunch of global brands that have come in. Both in terms of fashion and in terms of food. There's everything imported now, whether it's olive oil or gluten-free bread or whatever. So you can get anything at all. Is imported from everywhere. I discovered the apples were coming from America, and I was like, oh my God, what happened here? So there's apples growing all over Himachal. They're being chucked. So obviously, the consumption is huge because, from being a very poor country to, the last 20 years, the rise of the middle class, the rise of incomes, the expansion of the internet, people have, visibility of communication. Just, started with cable television, then it gone to live television, then on the internet, the telephones that people use. So, globally what's available everywhere. And as people have money, they want to buy more because that's, as Aman said, that, it's conditioning. Your condition that I want to drink this whiskey, or I want to drink that wine, or I want to have this shirt, or I want to have that outfit. It's conditioning. You become like peer pressure almost. That I must have this latest bag or latest shoe or whatever level you're at, you want to upgrade to the next one. It's part of that. I mean, there are very few people like you who are going out there saying, no, I'm only going to buy what's available in 5 kilometers of my neighborhood. So obviously we've seen vast amounts of consumption, and which is also fueled business and fueled economies globally. Now, whether this is bad for the planet, yes, it is, in terms of the waste it's generating, in terms of the meat that's being eaten, the rainforests that are being generated. But there's been a vast amount of consumption, and I think in India, if you compare our consumption levels, they're still microscopic compared to what's happening in much larger societies. Let's put it this way: much more developed societies, which have larger disposable incomes. We're still a microcosm of that. Even our disposals are a microcosm of what's happening. Is everyday waste. I think per capita human waste is far less probably here than it is globally. But there's definitely a change, and people are consuming. And I think there is a small section of consumers definitely who are conscious of what they eat, what they drink, what they put onto their body. I think especially this last year and a half with the pandemic, especially with this idea of immunity. Because there's a whole thing word was immunity. Immunity was a buzzword. You have strong immunity, you won't fall sick. Everybody became really conscious of what you eat, what you drink, what you put onto your body. That I will not do this because my immunity will go down. And I think that suddenly there's a whole burst of natural health tonics, health food, and obviously natural beauty products, and this whole interest in Ayurveda remedies for, again, prevention of disease. There's a huge, including with the government, they were promoting that. So I think there's a huge interest in that. And it obviously takes a while to percolate, because, when this thing happens, first you hear it, but first it's like a thing at the back of your mind, then it slowly comes to the forward part of your mind. And then you actually make that decision to actually go out and physically take that step of buying it or disposing of it in a particular way. It takes a while. So I think there's enough communication and enough conversation out there over a couple of years. I think the consumer, there'll be many more conscious consumers.
Aman, would you like to share, how have you sort of witnessed it across continents?
I think very, very differently, I have to say. I mean, I think that, again, growing up in Bombay, we grew up eating home cooked food every day. That was the norm. You ate at home, and going to a restaurant was an occasional thing. And now, and then having I've lived in, I think, 9 or 10 countries now over my career, and looking at various places, I find that, eating in a restaurant has become a norm now. People, it's very normal to eat 3, 4, 5 times a week in a restaurant, or buy a pre-finished meal from a supermarket. So, huge amounts of change in consumption patterns over the years, on how people eat and what they eat. And also in terms of, there was a point where it didn't matter. People just ate whatever without thinking of what they were putting in their bodies at all. And it's only, I think, the pandemic certainly has made it, more questionable, or people are questioning what they put in their bodies. But I think till 2 or 3 years ago, it's so, people didn't read labels anymore. Labels were so deceptive. You could put whatever you wanted on the front of a label, and then the back label was totally different. And also the regulation around labeling was completely crazy, because you'd have a product that is full of sugar, but you wouldn't mention that at all in the front of the label. You could mention the item that was 2% of the actual product. That could be the front of the label. You could call it a ginger juice, and the actual ginger is like 1% in the whole thing. So there's but that has changed. I think people have gotten more open to, or understand the idea that it's so important to read the label. It's so important to really look at what you're buying and believe in, find honest brands where you look at where the brand is sourced, where the product is sourced, where is it coming from, what's actually gone into it, and not shop without thinking about all of these things. So I think that consumption patterns have changed, and as those patterns have changed, people have changed with that. Brands have also changed, and regulation is all changing, but slowly and not at the pace that it should change, in my opinion.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. In fact, during the course of my work centered around waste reduction and also getting people to understand the need for a low impact life, what is very interesting is to see a lot of people, especially youngsters who are, in their early 30s, 20s, and late teens, maybe, they're all shifting now from an attitude of mindful consumption to almost, wanting no consumption at all. That's the model that they're all sort of aspiring for. Again, it's a very small fraction of society, but the way I look at it is that's how change starts, right? It starts very small, and then it kind of snowballs into a movement at some point in time. And it would be delightful to see whether more and more people are going to question the very need for purchasing anything firsthand, or instead they just adopt practices such as thrifting, secondhand, hand-me-downs, which were a very integral part of where we came from, or bartering, because I see a lot of barter clubs propping up, across, mushrooming, in fact, across the country. So I'm very curious to look into the future and see if a scenario such as that would arise. How do you see brands like yourself responding to these new consumer models and philosophies, in the future?
So from my side, I really hope that that's what we're gunning for. We're trying to prepare ourselves for that, the future of consumption. So we think that, the future of consumption is this mindful way. It is not about recycling anymore. It's about reusing. Reusing needs to be the bigger buzzword than recycling. It is about this idea of, okay, if you can't get to zero waste, how much can you get to? Or at least thinking about the fact that it's normal to take my shopping bag with me when I go to the supermarket. It's normal for me to take my, 3-4 different other bags where I can put my fruits and my vegetables. So I don't need to always take a little plastic bag and put my 4 apples in it and then come back home and then throw that plastic bag for that, 10-minute ride between the supermarket and here. So those are very, very small but conscious things that if everyone starts to look at in every, part of their daily lives, it starts to make a big impact. And so I hope that, as a business, we are really thinking about all of those things in terms of, so we're going to open a 0% shop this year, the first shop, and it's a pilot shop here in Germany. And a lot of the things that we're going to do there is very much about that, is trying to not give people the option to even have these ways, have bags, have things like this where they're all reusable, come take jars. We're actually, funnily enough, we've got an idea of taking a classic Indian tiffin as a delivery for delivered food, So we have a tiffin, taking an age-old model that's worked so well in India for so many years and trying to bring it here to Germany and say, hey, why don't we use an Indian tiffin for the delivery service? Because we then provide the customer with food delivered to their homes and then pick up the tiffin when we deliver the next tiffin. So things like that, taking back old models and trying to bring them back to use, because there were a lot of these old models that worked really well.
Yeah. And I remember, Vivek, the last conversation we had, you did mention, all of these old mechanisms that were in play where reuse and repurpose were the mantras of the day. It got me thinking about, how do we scale that up? How do we scale up practices that were really truly sustainable at one point in time in the context of industry and production and transportation through long distances and online shopping? And in this age, How do we do that, like as business models?
I don't have a clue. I'm something which I'm something which I'm looking for solutions for. It's something which we all I mean, there's something we're struggling with. I mean, this is coming back to your earlier question. See the biggest. I guess different things apply to different countries. So I'm talking primarily about India because this is where I am right now. And where there's a large poor population. Okay. Now that poor population they've only lived on hand-me-downs. They've got their elder brother's shirt and then they've got their sister's blouse and whatever. So then when there's an option, they want their own new blouse or they want their own new shirt or they want their own new football or whatever it is. There is that, that idea that mujhe naya mila hai. Not yes. So it's one thing for an educated city client who's wealthy, who can have the luxury of saying, I will reuse, go to a thrift shop, barter shop, that. And then there's this other, vast population, which is sitting, in smaller towns and, villages, etc., who've not really had new things, and are now discovering them, So, so education is critical. So what I'm finding in cities now, and I can use that over Delhi, that, if you're in schools and the schools, for example, we had this like 2 years ago, no, it's not something like 6-7 years ago. There was a whole campaign about no firecrackers over Diwali because Delhi is one of the most polluted cities. Yeah. And suddenly you found that actually it was the kids who were telling their parents. So the parents were buying the crackers and the kids were saying, no, we don't want them. And that's what you mentioned earlier, the 18, 22-year-olds will start, and actually it has to start from there. And the minute you have higher education, better quality education, even in the smaller towns and villages, etc., where they understand this idea of sustainability, that this is going to be bad. So get the new product, but find another way of, delivering it, getting it to you. Now, we spoke about this the last time. This pandemic is all about e-commerce boxes, mountains of boxes. I think every house, no matter where you are, whether it's groceries, whether it's food, whatever it is, there's just e-commerce boxes arriving every single day, Now, it's something which we struggle with. It's something which really bothers me because just every day in my house, there's always so much kabadi going out. And where is it going, Where is it physically being dumped? I can imagine, I mean, you're talking about that. I was just talking about the physical number of plastic gloves and those face masks, which are being dumped. God knows what's happening in those PPE sets, There's just like an influx into every single landfill, that is happening there. But as a brand, so, we looked at a few things. So, for example, one is to go to 100% recycled PET, move to glass bottles, then find ways of actually, like what you mentioned, Aman, is that we dispense in the shop, that you bring a refillable bottle, but we have to again figure out hygiene of, microbiological, issues, etc., because every shop transporting that, so then have a refillable thing. Obviously, that doesn't work on e-commerce, tying up with other organizations like you mentioned, Sarita, which will actually make you carbon neutral or make you carbon positive. So you actually, you pay the fee, you pay the structure, and so whatever you produce, you buy the carbon footprint things from them. And also the way the kind of, this is a long one, it's a difficult one, but the kind of producers we buy from, So like you said, buy local, buy locally, let's not, like this. So here's, for example, I use almond oil a lot. Okay, we also sell an organic almond oil. So I only use one from Kashmir. We're not importing it from different part of the world. So it's local Kashmiri almond oil, which we discovered a few years ago when there were floods. We didn't have the almond oil. Bit of a disaster, but so we didn't have those products for 5 months or 6 months. But we took that call, so that we would use stuff that was locally made. So I think there's small steps. There's small steps, but I think with the advancement of technology, so where you can actually have biodegradable containers, not saying that they're biodegradable, and maybe using to more steel or which is actually recyclable, or glass, which is also recyclable, with some kind of, so that is transporting it across the globe where it doesn't end up breaking, trying to do things like that. I think refilling is a big one, creating refillable containers. And basically, as technology develops, using that to to reduce our footprint.
How much of this process of building a product also includes a very in-depth research and development of the packaging that goes in it? And I ask this because I know today, for a lot of consumers, the packaging is as important as the product that it comes in, right? So just because I don't get a chance to always have conversations with the food industry and the personal care industry, I'm really curious, like how much of the time, how much of resources are really spent in developing packaging solutions, which I don't know. I mean, I understand that not everything is feasible for you all. Not everything is recyclable, unfortunately, in the world today. But even just to develop alternatives at which the brand can take responsibility for the packaging that it produces. I know there are a lot of small businesses who do take backs. There are a lot of small businesses who work with local NGOs to then further repurpose packaging in a way that it then comes back into the into a circular model, sort of an economy where it becomes further lifestyle goods. So does that happen in your process of development of products?
You want to go?
Yeah, sure. So in food and beverage, hugely. I mean, it's almost become as equal to the product inside the packaging. The packaging has become such a big topic. So, for example, we started in 2014. We brought Veen Water, which was our mineral water brand, to the Indian market. We were the first bottled water in a glass bottle in the Indian market. Imagine 2014 is just a few years ago. There wasn't a brand of water, and there's so much packaged water in the market, but nothing and it took a long time to be received well. So it was a very slow process for us. Obviously, glass was much more expensive than plastic, so there was a big issue with should I be spending so much for glass? But we got to a stage where we started recycling the glass, and we started, we found these glass crushers where we could crush the glass back into sand and take them back to the glass producers. So it became a really cool initiative to talk about, look, we're not only, thinking about glass, but we're also thinking about how to recycle glass. Whereas here we were still talking about plastic. All the other brands that we work with now on our platform, we have, I don't even think we have one or two brands that are plastic packed. Plastic has become, so unless, you're going to, like what Vivek said, you're going to RPET, or you're going to have, plastic that really has a way of being recycled properly, it's something we really look at much more. What we also found was in the last 24 months in beverage, cans have become really popular again. So cans used to have this image of being cheap and not so premium. And now, small craft brands, younger brands, they're all going back to, because aluminum is highly recyclable. Yeah. And the image of cans has become really, really popular again, even in premium products. And so definitely in terms of packaging has become a huge point to talk about.
Vivek, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, of course. See, this is something we think about a lot, okay? But I personally think about a lot. It bothers me. And the thing is this, we've been trying to figure out, so for example, like there's 50 or 55 shops, okay? Plus there's some 40 shop-in shops, across, or 50 shop-in shops, whether it's Sephora or Nike or whatever. They're across the country. Now, how do I create a collection unit? So the customer will come back, they'll bring 2 bottles back. So one is to bring it back to my shop, okay? So we started a project actually. We're starting the pilot actually, hopefully by beginning of October. Starting it in Delhi, in all the Delhi stores, where you can bring your bottles back and we will take them back and we will create whatever. They'll be taken back and they'll be recycled. They go to a recycler who will then, so we're actually starting this pilot project. But this is something we think about a lot, which is why we went to this 65% PCR bottles already. And ideally, I would like to go to 100%. I'm just not able to find the right, the quality which is good enough to be able to do that. Okay. This thing of cans is a great idea. Unfortunately, beauty products don't really work with cans, but we have actually moved some of them to aluminum. We are actually using some of the jars are now aluminum jars. They're no longer the acrylic or the plastic ones we were using earlier. The creams are all in glass now. All the creams are in glass jars. It's just the oils now and the shampoos which are in the RT-PCR. Not PCR. The RT-PCR is on my head.
Yeah, it's on everyone's head.
So the PCR, their PCR bottles. And
Vivek, I might have a really good solution for you, and I'll talk to you about this later.
I would love to hear that, because we're open to suggestion. We're open to anything at all, actually, because this is something which is on our mind. We really think about it. So the paper that we use now is coming from the sustainable forest. It's got that FSI certificate, whatever it's called. It's got the certificate on it. So we consciously, make a thing. We stopped using the shrink wrapping. We started to remove the inners from the packaging. So it's a slow process. But the thing is, also there is an expectation from a customer when they're buying a 2,500 rupee cream or a 3,000 rupee cream. They wanted to feel कि कुछ खर्चा हुआ है, क्या मिला? If I give them a plain bottle with a sticker on it, they're like, I'm sure it's effective, but it doesn't look nice in my bathroom. And that's human nature. We do want things which look nice. We automatically buy things which look nice. Just that's the way we are. We even when you walk into even a bottled water shop, you look at the Italian bottled waters, and if they look really pretty, then you want to buy one of those as against buying something else which is like a plain bottle with nothing on it. So it's just human nature. We automatically get attracted to nicer looking things, or what we perceive to be nicer looking things, as against things which are good for us. So we have to try and find a balance between that.
And still on the subject of packaging, because it's something that's very fascinating, and it's waste is sort of like a love interest area for me. I've always wondered as to how much of this process also involves an understanding of the local waste management system, where the product is going to eventually reach and where it's going to be disposed of. Because having practiced across India, the sad state of affairs is that waste management is so different, within administrative boundaries. So within the same state, you're going to have villages which operate very differently, municipalities which operate very differently. And I know it's impossible for a brand to kind of create solutions for all of these scenarios, but I'm still very curious as to knowing that recycling rates, for example, in this country are only applicable to high value recyclables like scrap metals or paper or glass, rubber tires at the max, and things like plastics barely make it to the recycling stream, simply because they don't have value. I mean, nobody really earns a living by recycling plastics. So in that kind of non-existent waste management system sort of a space, there's also all of these new confusing or boggling materials that come into the market. Common examples being something like Tetra Pak, or the food packaging, which is multi-laminate, which really confuses a consumer who's trying to get into a conscious sort of a lifestyle. It's very confusing for that person as to where do I dispose of this, what's going to happen to it, and all of that. So how much of your process of building products and building your brand is also about understanding disposal, the ultimate disposal of things?
In our case, a considerable amount. So at least in India, for example, when we started with glass bottles with water, it was a big thing to try to understand, where are the bottles going to go if you put them into the bin? Can we take them back? We looked at various systems. So in the beginning, we started working only with hotels and restaurants. So we were supplying the bottled water to hotels, and we were very involved with the hotels in trying to work out systems, what would work best, what were they doing with the bottles, where did the bottles go from there, could we pick them back up? Then we got this idea that, could we get these bottle crushers so that they sit on the loading bays of the hotel. So instead of actually, collecting all the bottles in bins, you could crush them on site. So you actually reduce the waste by 90% on site rather than having to take it to a recycling facility and do things like that.
Yeah.
And we had successes in some places, and in some places it just didn't work because it's a thing that every element of the chain has to get involved with, and everyone has to take their part in it. There's a cost involved to it, so it all depends on how each partner in the whole chain gets involved. But it's certainly something that, to understand how the end is going to be, or where the actual product is going to land up, one has to do that research ourselves.
Yeah. Vivek, do you have anything to add to that, or?
It's something I think about, but it's just in sheer number of SKUs. When we're doing some I don't know, 100,000 SKUs a month. I don't know, more than that. I have no idea. It's a physical number of SKUs which go out every month.
Yeah.
And they're going, with e-commerce around the country. Small towns, very, very small towns all over the place. It's kind of difficult to anticipate, where this will go. I'd love to have this conversation with you separately if we can find a way of, at least in larger towns and cities, create some kind of mechanism for unfortunately we can't crush PET bottles on site. Yeah. And also there's not enough. If you're buying 4 bottles, then, maybe you consume 3 bottles a month, of your shampoo, conditioner, whatever, where's that going to go, and you're buying it from 4 different brands as a household, So, in a house, you might use maybe 2 shower gels, 1 bottle of shampoo, a bottle of hair oil, some bottle of conditioner, in a household of 2 people or 3 people, then, the 5 bottles, where does that go,
Yeah.
And, it's just probably going to go to the garbage bin.
Okay, I'm going to just come back to the conscious consumer and sort of in my set of questions on this one thing, which is very, very prevalent today. And that's this terminology of greenwashing by brands, where, there's a lot of information or misleading information about a company's products, how they're environmentally a lot more sound and true to their word and all of that. So I'm not going to ask you, where your brands are on that. But if a lay consumer, an everyday person, has to sort of navigate around all of this information and narrow down, that into simple, logical explanation for them to be able to choose better, to be able to choose more consciously, what are some of the pointers or what are some of the tips that you would like to give them to truly avoid greenwashing?
Wow.
Vivek?
I think, I don't know the
too much?
No, it's not too much. I think it's very simple. I think Aman touched on it earlier also. There's a thing is read the label, read your ingredient list. Okay. So it's very simple. If it says key ingredients, that means there's a lot of garbage being hidden. If they list all ingredients, then because very often by law, you're only required to list key ingredients. So like you said, it can be a ginger drink, but it can be 2% of ginger. I guess it's a herbal shampoo, but it's 2% actives. I can call it a herbal shampoo, but that's meaningless, no? So you actually look at the ingredient list, and if it's a complete ingredient list, that is your beginning point. Most of them is just say key ingredients, whatever the key ingredients, what they consider key ingredients, and the rest is QS or whatever it is by weight. So that's not that's a starting point. I think if you actually look, if there's a complete ingredient list with everything on it, that's a starting point. At least you know what this is. Okay. And on the bottles themselves, if you're looking at if it's a PCR bottle, there's always a stamp which says it's PCR bottle. On the paper, there's this FSI certificate which says there's a stamp which says this is coming from there. You mentioned those, even those Tetra packs. I think some of them are recyclable, some of them they have that recyclable, the logo by law.
Yeah.
On it or not, So at least So look for the logos. If it's saying organic, look for an organic certification. If it says organic coconut oil, turn it over and see what certification is it, because anybody can call anything organic. Where's the law? So read your label, see what it says. So it's, if it's organic, who's the certifying body? If it's cruelty free, is there a PETA certificate or not? Is there a stamp on it or not? So just read the labels carefully. Go to their website and read read the labels carefully to see what certifications are actually saying that they are XYZ, as against just my saying it. So the more you read, see the ingredient list, see the certifications. I think that's a good starting point.
Okay. Aman, do you have something?
I agree. I just think, you have to take the initiative and the time,
To go through the label. I think
thing is to take the time.
Nobody reads labels, yeah.
Yeah, and certainly what I do is, at least brands that I use regularly or all the time, I know the brands. I go to the websites. I look at trying to understand how they work, what they do. Actually, in India, I came across a really cool new kind of platform called Zubop, where you could go and it's like a independent platform that helps you search brands and makes you look at and actually focuses on beauty brands. So they kind of give you a rundown of what the labels are and what they really are. So there's a kind of new age way of going to platforms that can do that work for you if you find those platforms, and they kind of give you that neutral opinion on whether that's a good product or is it a marketing product,
gimmick,
as you say. Yeah.
Right. So we have a lot of questions from the audience, and I'm sort of feeling guilty that we kept it. So there's a specific question for Aman, which is how can marketing models be improved upon to educate consumers and convert them into mindful consumers?
Oh, it's a tough question, but I mean, I think that all marketing should be educational. In our opinion, we try a lot of, the things that we do is very much about education, because what we're doing is making alternatives easier for people to have. And so part of the process of making the alternatives easier is educating people on how to consume the products, what the benefits of the products are, why they are better alternatives. And so the topic of education as far as marketing is concerned is completely relevant in everything that we do. So every marketing initiative that we take is always dependent on how we're educating people, because the education is where we see the success in getting more consumers going into the path that we're prescribing.
Right. Vivek, there's a question, or actually this is for both of you. How different, and I think we should have probably started with this, how different is packaging for the food and perishables industry as opposed to fashion and product-based industries? If you could just quickly, very briefly touch upon each of your areas of packaging.
Sorry, say that again.
How different is packaging for the food and perishables industry as opposed to fashion and product-based industries?
Well, I guess you can look at it, no? And you can see the difference.
But I think they're
the question is
a lot more technically.
Okay, so one is that the thing is this. So, if you are buying a television set, it's a hard product, okay? And it has to be protected. So the packaging that goes for when you buy a TV, it can't get damaged in transit. So, if there's a LCD screen, it has to have, whatever, thermocol edges or foam edges or whatever it is, and has to be transported from Korea to India or wherever it's coming from. So there's one kind of packaging. When I'm putting, for example, okay, I won't talk about alcohol and water that you do, but I'm saying when I'm putting basically an oil or something, so I just first worry about leakage, okay? I have to think of contamination. So the packaging, where there's basically all of the bottles have to be UV treated before they are filled. They're cleaned, UV treated, and then filled. Because there's contamination, there's microbes that can come in, so micro contamination which can take place. So you have to make sure the bottles are absolutely hygienically cleaned, then packed, then sealed. So in the transport process also, so a lot of the reasons we have to use outer boxes is that the bottles don't get dented or they don't get damaged, the labels don't get scratched in the transport process when it's finally received. As against, when you're buying a T-shirt, I guess you are not really, because it's a consumable, it's perishable. It needs to be protected in one way. A T-shirt, frankly, if it's, I guess they put that Seal King or whatever they put, that plastic Seal King or a brown paper bag is good enough. You're not concerned about microbes, you're not concerned about contamination, you're not concerned about any of those things. Go ahead.
No, but to add to that, Sarita, from my side, actually, within all the industries, the core, sources are pretty much the same, right? We're using plastic or glass or metal or cardboard or paper. Those are the main raw materials for most packaging. So that is across the board anyway. So those 4 or 5 main raw materials are then put into different, forms or ways, which might be more food and beverage related or more, lifestyle related, but the core
fashion would have less packaging.
Are the same.
Have more packaging, the fashion would have less, have one thing. The food and like cosmetics would have more packaging, definitely.
Right. And I asked this specifically because there are a few questions on, I think, small businesses who want to, embrace this sort of a philosophy of reduced waste packaging. And I thought that could, just help them start thinking. Yeah. I think we might have time for just 2 more, and I'm going to do very specific questions. For Aman, could you share some thoughts on how 0% translates in the current Indian scenario, given that our habits just a few decades ago was 0%?
True.
So it's a really, really interesting thing, right? So, I mean, it almost is like, we're almost inspiring people to think about those old habits and saying, hey, should we question whether it's worth going back to some of these and how can we maybe go back to some of them because they would be so relevant in today's world? And is all the development that's happening, is it going in the right path? I mean, this is the big question that we should all be thinking about, is because, we're consuming, we're eating, we're having more money and we want more. But is that really the right way? Is that, benefiting us personally? Is that benefiting our bodies? Is it, I watched this one documentary, where it just said, we're eating meat and then the meat is killing us, because it's causing more and more disease in us. So all of these are very relevant questions of, are some of those things, again, growing up, we ate meat once a week. Now, eating meat every day is a norm, or more and more people want to do that because they see it as a benefit of, the more money you have, the more it's all somehow interconnected, and it shouldn't be.
Yeah, and it's not only that, it's also the meat that you were eating.
Yeah.
20 years ago was the cow was eating, or the goat was eating, grass or leaves or whatever it was. Now it's a farm and it's a processed factory, and they're being given a feed which is full of antibiotics, and those antibiotics are coming into you, basically. Yeah. So it's a different thing.
Yeah. Asad, can we take one last question?
Sure.
So Vivek, what are some of the other brands like yours that you know of, that you personally would like people to know of, that are elevating sustainability to a company philosophy?
Brands like mine in what space? In the beauty space?
In the sustainability space, helping consumers evolve into a lot more conscious way of life.
In India or abroad?
In India. That's why I specifically asked this to you.
So I don't know. I mean, there's a ton of them from what I can see.
Brands that you personally might have.
I mean, just in Delhi alone. Okay, so just to give you an example, in Delhi alone, there's a company called it's a Japanese or Asian food. It's called Noshi, and they've just started something called Yum Yum or Dum Dum or something, which is the Indian food. Okay, all delivery is in glass jars or in cardboard, recyclable cardboard. All of it. Okay. So all the plastic is gone, those plastic dabbas, it's all glass jars. I think they charge 400 rupees of packaging over the price of the thing. And it's really nice because you actually, first of all, it looks really nice when you get a glass jar full of dal. Okay, or it's coming in a matka, like a handi. So the biryanis and all are coming in those the mud, the
earthenware,
like another earthen handi. So the dals and all are coming, the biryanis are coming in that. With the dhakkan on it, which is sealed with, so it feels great. And I think it's wonderful that, and you actually enjoy eating out of it. It feels very hygienic instead of getting a mass of plastic, which you could chuck into the garbage. This is something I came across very recently, in the very recent past. And I don't know. I'm just trying to figure out. I mean, this is like right now on the top of my head because it's just I just saw it. But there's a bunch of companies out there. There's a ton of people who are really conscious and very very careful about what they're doing. Even in the even in the in the and this is something which we've been also exploring. I mean, using bamboo and banana fiber in the clothing space, and in their packaging, and because of banana fiber basically disintegrates, so does the bamboo fiber disintegrate. There's a bunch of fashion people who are actually working with waste fabric, leftover waste fabric from mills, from factories, from export houses, and actually making them into garments, into clothes, into things like that. So basically, everything is recycled. Basically, it's
Right.
all waste. It's all waste fabric. There's a very good carpet company out of Jaipur. Again, I've forgotten the name. And basically, what she does is all the carpets are made out of shredded fabric. What we were talking about the other day, the shredded fabric which comes from the factory. So all the carpets are made from that. It's a very large factory, and they're doing quite well now. So all the fabric comes from shredded waste. It's a very big carpet company. The name can't get you. I'm sure you can Google it.
Yeah.
So all of the carpets are made and they're exporting them globally. So there's a bunch of people I think who are doing this now. I think it's a very good initiative, and I think it's happening with a lot of, and I would really encourage small companies to do so. And if anybody, they can always reach out to me. I'm happy to have a conversation with anybody if they want to. With pleasure.
Wonderful. Asad, all yours.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for such a insightful and interesting session on these innovative practices. I was just thinking about when Aman talked about the tiffin, and we order this milk called Sarita Farms, and it comes in the glass bottle. So it's actually gone back to when I was a little kid. I remember this glass bottle milk that you delivered to your house. It's exactly that, and the next day the empty bottles get collected. And Vivek, I was thinking of you. How do you recycle or get people to exchange their used containers? I remember once I spotted, like, this is more than a decade back in New York, in my wife's some strange drawer down in the bathroom, these empty Mac bottles. And I was like, what is it for? She said, you collect 10 and you go to the store, you get a free lipstick. So maybe you have to incentivize the customer to be more mindful.
We are doing that. We are doing that.
Wonderful, wonderful. So I'll make sure she recycles her Karma bottles then. But now, thank you so much, guys. And this panel was actually scheduled in May, in the height of that wave 2, and I think we've all become even more conscious, I feel, after that second wave, and bit more respectful to our environment and the products we consume. So I have to do my thank yous to the people behind people, to Shrimoy, Deepika, and Shakil for actually introducing us to both of you all. I mean, and the wonderful work that you all guys do. But and to Sarita for so skillfully moderating the session. We have lots more interesting programs, so do stay tuned. Our next session is on Museums 21, the cultural meaning and digitization legacy, which is next Thursday on the 19th, and many more. To find out more, you just have to stalk us on social media or check out our website. But until then, stay safe, stay healthy, and remember that learning never stops. Thank you so much, and have a good night.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.